Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. This segment is brought to you by Real Crowd. If you'd like to invest in real estate with crowdfunding with experienced developer, check out realcrowd.com. Today we're talking about emerging trends in real estate 2018. This is an incredible report. You have to read it. We're talking about the highlights. We have Mitch Roschelle and Andy Warren here with PwC in Studio One. And the next segment here we have is housing at a tipping point. So what gives there?
Well, listen, here's the plain reality is we are forming households at a rate considerably greater than our net additions to housing stock, whether it be single family or multifamily. A household formation, and often people in the audience get excited when I say this, is statistically when children move out of their parents' house. Right? Andy's got that going. Michael, you're just praying. But in any event, so we were forming households at a considerably faster rate. So we're actually undersupplied in terms of new additions to stock of both single family and multifamily. And what that's doing is it's driving the price up. We're actually the high watermark in housing prices that we've really ever been. And what's interesting is it's not a bubble. So most of the time when you look at quick inflation of prices, you say to yourself, oh my God, it's getting a little frothy, it's a bubble. But the fact of the matter is we're not. If you look at Gen X and the boomers, we created a lot more housing stock for them at the time when they would have been buying. But for millennials, we haven't. And if you look at it this way, the millennial generation and Gen Z, which we talked about earlier, between the two of them are 150 million people. And if you divide that by 2 and figure that there's, well, maybe divide it by 3, we will not have created that much housing stock for them. The other thing that's happening is the baby boomers, as we said earlier, are living longer and maybe staying put longer. So they're not giving way in communities to the millennials by selling their home and going elsewhere. So that's what sort of got us at a tipping point. If you want to buy a starter home and you actually have the down payment and actually qualify for the loan, because that's still hard, you may not be able to find the inventory because there's nothing on the market. In any given month, if you look at the inventory of new or existing homes, we're looking at 4-month supply, maybe at a max in the off season of 5-month supply. If you go back to historical peaks, we were at 12, 14-month supply. So,
why are builders not building more quantity then?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Randy.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to take that? I'm just kidding.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll add in.
The fact of the matter is the price of land has gone up. The price of labor has gone up. The price of lumber has gone up. And lenders, the fourth L, lenders haven't, now later in the cycle they're there, but earlier in the cycle they weren't. So the fact of the matter is they look at their opportunity to get a return. Equity is not seeing the returns on investment because while there's a wall of people who want homes, the marketplace isn't really price discovering at levels that make sense for new construction. Okay, if you look at new homes versus existing homes, there's about a 30% difference in terms of the trading price of a new home versus the trading price of an existing home. And the fact of the matter is it just costs more to build those things. That's why we have this cottage industry of flipping. We have this industry, there's all of this opportunity in fixer-uppers. It's really just a return on investment thing. If you pull out the land component and find a way to get land less expensive so that you can lower the price of new stock, I think it works because the lenders are there. The commodity price of lumber will regulate at some point. Labor remains a big issue. But the biggest uncontrollable cost really for builders is land, and the land cost has just shot up.
Yeah.
And if we add a fifth L to that, we could add location to that.
Yeah.
Before, when we'd get to this point in the cycle,
Andy, I'm writing that down.
you would move out further where land was cheaper
Yeah.
and then be able to buy. But the buyer pool today doesn't want to drive till they qualify. They want to be closer in, so we're seeing kind of a constriction on that, forcing people back to more dense areas. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, good points. Well, let's talk about the next issue. Retail transforms and stores remain. So retail is a great topic today.
you can't pick up the paper without seeing retail.
Right.
And it's,
Everybody's an expert too.
and my favorite quote on retail is, "The mall's not dead; it's just changing. Give it time to get decent." And we're finding that people still want to shop in a store, and they still want to have that access. But how you reach that person that's coming to the store is changing, and it will have to continually evolve to keep that interest in the shopper. And it's experiential retail that people want. They don't want to just go and look around. So very interesting in terms of the amount of people and the amount of money they have to spend, and they just have more options on how they want to spend it today. And that is narrowing the field as to how retail responds and who succeeds and who does not.
So for retail sales, we have a holiday forecast that's coming out, which I can share that link also for your audience. But what's interesting is we still have half of our retail sales taking place in a digital environment. But what's interesting is the digital environment is very experiential. So you can do so much more now digitally when you're shopping. You can price compare. You can see the color. You can even see what the glasses look like on your face. I mean, it's really amazing. There's digital opportunities for custom-made clothing, which I still can't figure out how you can do that, but all of that stuff is there. So they've created a great, robust experience digitally. Now what's happening with the retailers, they have to figure out how to create that experience as well. I think that there's two problems that exist in that world. One is merchandising, because they haven't really figured out how to get the right merchandise in the store that people will want to buy in the store as opposed to buy online. And then the second thing is distribution, right? So if you're competing with something that shows up in your door the next day or the day after that, how do you compete in I call it stick and brick because we're real estate people, other people call it brick and mortar. How do you compete in a brick and mortar environment? So what they've been doing is they've been layering experience on to give something tangible that exists in a store that you can't get online. But what's happening is online retailers are keeping pace with that and creating digital experiences that may be more desirable than the stick and brick. So it's going to be a long process. Listen, the fact of the matter is when you want to buy a gallon of milk, you're still going to go to a supermarket or a convenience store or a drugstore to buy the gallon of milk. There's still going to be essential staples that are retailed in a traditional fashion, but a lot of other elements are going to transform themselves.
Well, I still have a cow in my yard. No.
Yeah, exactly. Farm to table.
Well, what did you say, like 3 years ago doing this, you said you hadn't been to a grocery store ever in your life or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been long periods of times where I'm not in grocery stores. And, in fact, I went in one the other day and they were so excited to see me. When I walked down the aisle, they started turning on the lights all around me. As I walked down the aisle, I think, Michael, welcome back. So what did your participants, was there a theme when you talked to your interviewees that are involved in retail about what they think about retail moving forward and retail real estate? Do you see anything kind of jump out?
It's interesting because retail continues to lag the other property types in terms of the outlook going forward. But the people that are actually active in retail are more positive about it. But really, it kind of goes back to the days where we're going, okay, we're getting rid of this maybe merchandise person, but we're putting a gym in. We're putting a food outlet in. And we're mixing and matching the food outlets. So I have maybe a high-end food outlet. I have a fast food. I have a fast casual. So people are thinking more and more about tenant mix than ever before as part of that experience, beyond the fact of having concerts in the common area and things to draw people in and keep them there for a while. So
the next brandy won't be discovered in a mall?
In a mall, yeah, that'd be online anyway.
Yeah,
but it's just the people that know what they're doing feel pretty confident that they'll be able to find something that works, and they've acknowledged that it's going there.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is, just to interrupt for a second, is the growth in retail had traditionally been tied to rooftops, right? We added neighborhood and community strip centers and even secondary malls where the path of growth was. And Andy referenced before the last thing, which is location. We're not sort of going out there. So that's also a bit of a headwind. But what's interesting is if you look at where the retail is, how do we change the tenant mix? And people are thinking differently. one of the biggest things that we're seeing across the country are these urban food mall things, where you take just a traditional restaurant spot. You could even take a Anchor, that big box that's just been dark for a long time in a power center, and you turn it into one of these urban food malls. It's a really, really hot trend. If you figure out what people want and what's working someplace else, and you bring it to your locale, the only place you could put that urban food mall is in retail, because you could not do that alternatively. So there are opportunities. You just have to figure out what people want and how to really transform space into something that fits for that next use.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And speaking of opportunities, that's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to take a short break. And Emerging Trends in Real Estate 2018, PwC, ULI, the report, they talk about some best bets, right? We mentioned earlier, you got to skate where the puck is going. That's what this is all about. Check out the report and stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm Michael Bull. This is America's Commercial Real Estate Show.